Conor McGregor, he is to enter the USADA testing pool immediately, according to USADA. Here's a quote from them. We have recently been in direct contact with Conor McGregor, and as he confirmed today in the media, we expect to receive his paperwork coming out of retirement and re-entering the USADA testing pool immediately. They continue. Like other athletes who come out of retirement, the UFC anti-doping policy, McGregor will be subject to testing for at least 6 months and must provide at least 2 negative samples before being permitted to compete. The purpose of this rule is to ensure that all athletes who are not subject to the period of testing are adequately tested over a reasonable amount of time before competing to ensure a level playing field for all athletes. If my math is right, we'll call it today he jumped in, then he's free on November 22nd. That means he's too late for New York, but he can compete in December, where the UFC in the last few years has been having a mid-December card in Las Vegas. It's a pretty big one usually. I imagine the Chandler fight is still on, even though the season of TUF is going to run from pretty much starting in about a week till August. So, I don't know if any of that momentum is lost. So how much does this fight matter to you? Keeping it together, if they do it, and by the time they fight, what will be the stakes? Because as we mentioned, we'll have a new BMF. We're going to have a new contender in the Oliveira-Dariush match, and by then, Makhachev will have probably defended against one or the two. I know there's a lot there, but I think you guys can figure it out. That's why we came with you three this week, and not the mother numbskulls on the staff. There you go.
Yeah, this is going to be very interesting. I think this fight is going to, as far as what's at stake, it's hard to say that the winner here, especially if it's Conor, won't get a title shot just because it's Conor. But I think what's at stake here is that this fight will let us know exactly where Conor McGregor's at, because I feel like certainly we can say that probably his best days are behind him, right? Obviously won 2 belts in 2 different weight classes, but you can't totally discard the idea that he's not an elite fighter still. But I think Michael Chandler is a good test for that. So I think we're going to find out if Conor McGregor is just going to kind of become a money fight and is just going to maybe be in the BMF type of fights, or if he really is good and maybe he goes out there and destroys Michael Chandler, who's obviously very, very solid, and maybe he is title worthy. Who knows? At 155, obviously, I think that's what makes most sense, but it seems like 170, that's a weight class he'd like to compete in. So certainly very interesting. We'll see where this all plays out. But come that fight, I think we're going to find out where McGregor is in the sport.
Yeah, and by the way, I got to include the chat before we get to Mike. They deliver. Sometimes they crack me up, man. Check out Sly756. He says, Justin is a social worker. Dustin's the charity guy. How BMF? Look, it's not like he doesn't have a good point, but I think once they lock the cage, they are BMF. Mm-hmm. That was funny. Skyviews and El Daddy says, well, how about Bobby Green versus El Kakui? That's BMF worthy. And he kind of has a point, except this year's BMF is already taken. But anyway, Mike, back to you regarding McGregor and all that.
Yeah, obviously happy to see this step going forward. He's not officially in the USADA program yet. We need to see that documentation and that, first couple tests show up on the website database they have that everyone loves to post. No test shown for McGregor for the last almost 2 years now at this point. But yeah, this is obviously promising. You see the comments out there from people, Conor's never going to fight again, and he's just doing this to promote his Roadhouse movie and his Netflix documentary and all those sorts of things. But it seems like there is actually legs to this now. He's out there in Dublin this past weekend doing interviews, talking about the fight around this Katie Taylor boxing match that he had a hand in promoting. So his head, as much as ever, right? Like he's showing up at BKFC and all that stuff, seems to be very much in the game, but it was like, is he actually going to come back and compete? And we're getting this now. Hopefully the timing lines up. Hopefully these tests come back clean and there's no issues in that regard. And we get the December fight that we've all been waiting for since this was announced. Feels like a long time ago at this point. What are the stakes going to be by then? I think you guys have laid it out pretty well. It's going to depend on how these fights play out, both at lightweight and welterweight. I don't know if Conor McGregor can make lightweight again. I mean, maybe if he does a very dedicated camp and has the proper nutrition, is uninjured and all that stuff, but he seems like a pretty big guy at this point. I don't know if 155 is in the cards for him anymore. So you look at 170 there, how things could play out and all that stuff with Colby Covington and Leon Edwards, and then is Bilal Muhammad actually going to get the next title shot if Conor gets a win? I don't know. It gets pretty complicated here. So it's a Conor McGregor fight. By the time December rolls around, if we're getting this on, December 9th or whatever the event date will be for that pay-per-view this year, there's going to be a lot of excitement, a lot of hype coming off the show, coming off all the stuff that he'll do to promote it, and the UFC will promote it, and it's going to feel like a big deal. And the questions about title shots in any division are going to be rampant, and we're going to be, the same feeling around there. And a lot of people are going to forget that, he only has one win in the past, 6 years or whatever the case may be. So Conor McGregor is still a special unicorn figure in our sport, and when it comes around, all the rules and ideas of what we apply to everyone else is going to go out the window, and he's going to play by his own rules.
All right, Goes, what say you? December in Vegas, or does he wait till 2024 to stack that nice attempt to get on the Forbes list? You know how that guy's driven.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that does drive him, so I wouldn't be shocked if he had that type of strategy. He's a smart guy when it comes to that type of stuff. But I mean, I think the stakes are kind of high, for everyone involved, right? The UFC, for Conor McGregor, for Michael Chandler. Danny makes a good point in that we have to kind of see where Conor McGregor's at. Like, he's getting older. That's a gruesome injury that he's trying to recover from. And Michael Chandler's the right guy to test you to see where you're at in that, because he's going to push you in every single way. That guy is good wherever that fight goes. But there are ways of getting advantages in that fight, and one would be if it's at 170. That's a little too big for Michael Chandler, I think. For me, I hope that Conor McGregor can make 155. I think we need that type of fight, that type of payoff, but it's really not looking that way. There's so many hurdles here with USADA, so many things that can kind of take this fight away from us. It kind of makes it scary because all we do is see Conor McGregor, right? He's in our eyes constantly. Like you guys mentioned, the Roadhouse movie, the Netflix documentary. We're going to see him on TUF with Michael Chandler. If we don't get that fight and we don't get it in the right state, whatever weight class we all prefer, 155, I prefer it there. It's not going to feel like it had the payoff, and that's going to kind of suck.
All right. Well, Marcus Williams in the chat also shares the same sentiment. He says Conor McGregor will not fight in 2023.